Hi, you're listening to Beyond Profits, a podcast by 117 Capital, where we explore the principles, ethics, and impact behind truly sustainable business. In a world driven by profit margins, we are shifting the conversation, diving into value-based leadership, non-interest finance, and the evolving role of ethical investing. Rooted in the spirit of Islamic finance, Beyond Profits is where ethics meets finance, where purpose meets performance, and where values drive ventures. Each episode, we engage with leading voices across various industries, discussing how non-interest finance principles and frameworks are reshaping sustainable business growth, empowering communities, and redefining wealth. Whether you are an entrepreneur, investor, or future leader, this space is for you. Because at 117 Capital, we believe that profits is just the beginning. The true measure of success lies in what we build beyond profits.
Assalamu alaikum, everyone, and welcome to Beyond Profits, a 117 Capital podcast. My name is Fanaga Muduri. I'm your host for today, and I'm having my special guest, Mr. Ismail Rufai, here. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Rufai Ismail Olainka. I'm the head advisor at 117 Financial Services Limited. 117 Financial Services Limited is a SEC license issuing out of what we call Islamic banking firm. We technically do Shari'ah-compliant advisory services, fundraising services, or any services in relation to the Islamic capital market, whether it is Sukuk, whether it is structuring transaction, or advising you to raise fund in the Shari'ah-compliant way. In the past, I've worked with 117 Capital Limited, which is also a fund management firm, and Lotus Capital Limited. I studied economics from the University of Abuja. I'm also an IOFI certified Shariah advisor. I've attended training both within and outside the country in relation to Islamic finance and also the capital market in general. I'm an advocate for financial inclusion, and I'm an advocate for Islamic finance, and that is why I preach Islamic finance, I eat Islamic finance, I wear Islamic finance, and anywhere I go, I like talking about Islamic finance. Why? Because Islamic finance, I take it as a form of ibadah and as a path to Jannah. Yes, it is a form of livelihood. I remember while in the university, my mindset is that I will never work in a conventional setting. And alhamdulillah, today, all where I've worked, they've all been Shariah-compliant firm. And inshallah, I pray Allah will put me on the same path that the Jannah, I'll still continue to work in the non-interest financial industry.
We're here to talk about anything and everything about Sukuk. Now, what is Sukuk? I'd like to ask.
Sukuk is an Islamic financial instrument that represents individual ownership in an underlying asset. Asset in this case could be tangible, intangible, or usufruct. And so Sukuk has been used globally in raising funds for developmental purpose, also increasing or what we call working capital purpose, depending on the underlying contract. So the contracts are numerous. Technically, we have about 14 contracts that can be structured using Sukuk, be it partnership contracts, sales contracts, lease contract, or agency contract. So any of the mentioned four major contracts can be used to structure Sukuk for any of the halal purpose in which the fund will actually be raised for.
Okay, that's very interesting. And what kind of halal purposes are they typically used for?
So, as the saying goes, that everything is halal except what is otherwise stated. So, meaning by the time we calculate or look at any of our activities today, we realize that virtually everything we engage in can be classified to be halal. However, in between halal lies haram. So, meaning in some businesses, we now need to go and be looking at some of the services what are some of the prohibitions, whether it aligns with the Islamic principles or not. Sharia-wise, we know that interest, or what we call usury, is haram. Engaging in businesses that contain intoxicants like alcohol, producing of beauty or jeans can also be classified to be haram. Producing or engaging in any business entities that have to do with betting or gambling can also be classified to be haram, or any business farming activities that involve uh, pork as an underlying product can also be classified to be halal. Otherwise, most other businesses, we can say they are halal. So any of these business, we can structure sukuk for it. However, it must have an underlying asset. So meaning there must be a particular specific purpose in which the fund being raised will actually be used for. So for a sukuk to be classified to be permissible, there must be an underlying asset. And I mentioned this underlying asset could be tangible, meaning asset that we can see, and could be intangible, meaning it could be classified as a service, or what we call usufruct when it involves lease as an underlying contract. Thank you very much.
And that's very interesting. Um, I keep seeing, especially when I'm driving around Abuja, I'll see something like Sukuk 3, Sukuk 4. Now, this particular episode is a very special episode because we're talking about Sukuk 7, which was just announced. Now, can you tell us about Sukuk 7? What it would mean for our viewers, why they would be interested in it?
So I need to go to the beginning. Historically, in the year 2017, the federal government of Nigeria, through the Federal Ministry of Works and Housing, raised the first 100 billion naira from the capital market. And before this, federal government of Nigeria Sukuk, there was the Osun Sukuk of 2013. So the federal government of Nigeria in that 2017 raised the first FGN Sukuk, in which we called FGN Sukuk I. And the fund was used for the construction of road in the 6 geopolitical zones of the country, including the Federal Capital Territory. And Alhamdulillah, last year, that Sukuk matured and it has been fully paid to investors. So meaning out of the 6 that have been raised, 1 have matured. We only have 5 outstanding. With this new issuance of Sukuk 7, it will make the outstanding to be 7. And like you mentioned, you said when you drive through some major highway, especially federal highways, or even in the major, in the city capital, Abuja, you will see road labeled with Sukuk 1, Sukuk 2, Sukuk 3, Sukuk 4.
Right.
So Sukuk, like I mentioned, is used for developmental purpose. And like in the case of the Nigerian sovereign Sukuk, is basically used in the construction and rehabilitation of roads. So meaning the ministry have identified some portion of the federal highways that need either total reconstruction or rehabilitation, and they allocate this road to the Sukuk SPV. So meaning there will be an SPV. The SPV is the owner of those roads. The federal government have transferred the ownership of those roads to the SPV. So when investors invest in the Sukuk, they are technically the owners of those assets.
Yeah.
Now, the SPV will now lease the constructed roads to the federal government agency, which is the Federal Ministry of Works. And it is expected that it is a tenant-landlord relationship. The SPV, being the landlord, have leased the asset to the tenant, which is the Federal Ministry of Works, and it is expected that a tenant should pay rental, and that is the rental investors do receive on an annual basis, payable twice a year. So meaning to maturity, as the owner of the asset, you'll be paid your rental, and at maturity, the principal amount will be paid to the investor. So in summary, these are we able to explain basic dynamics of how the federal government of Nigeria, inaugural in 2017, raised the first one. Then in 2018, they were able to raise the second one till 2023 when they raised the 6th Sukuk, and today they are raising 300 billion naira. So the dynamic is the same, just that the rows are different.
Yeah.
So meaning for every Sukuk portion you see, every series has a starting point and an end point. So meaning there will not be commingling of the funding into any other project. So every specific money has a specific purpose of usage.
And that's great because it's more like owning a share in the project rather than borrowing from it.
Yes, so meaning when the government borrow for Sukuk, unlike the other conventional bond, whereby they can borrow to pay salary, which is recurrent expenditure. For Sukuk, basically is 100% on capital expenditure. So meaning it is basically for infrastructural development, and the Sukuk holders own a fraction. Every Sukuk holders own a fraction in those assets. So meaning the asset is, like I mentioned in my introduction, that it represents individual ownership in those underlying assets. So if you invest your 10,000 naira, you are also a owner in that asset, the same way with somebody who invested 10 billion naira, just that
Yes.
the percentage of ownership differs
Yes.
at this moment. So everybody will be classified as owner.
Okay, that's great, and that's a very good introduction to Islamic instruments and Sukuk specifically, and the Sukuk VII that we're hosting this podcast specifically for. Now let's go into who are the target audience for the Sukuk. The retail parties and corporate entities, right?
Yeah, so before the coming of Sukuk into the market, a lot of ethical investors, or let me say, probably people who faith align with ethical investment, have been technically or financially excluded from the capital market.
Yes.
So meaning a lot of people believe that they don't want to invest in interest-related financial instruments, who are not given the opportunity to invest in the capital market. However, with the coming of Sukuk, we've seen that the percentage of investment by retail investors, especially, have increased over the years. So, meaning day by day, you have a lot of people who are now bringing their capital into the market to invest. Why? Because it is Shari'ah-compliant.
And these are everyday individuals, just regular people like you and me.
Yes, so both informal and formal, and that is why the minimum investment was reduced to a small amount of just 10,000 naira. And like you also know that we also have non-interest financial institutions that have increased over time. As it is today, we have 5 non-interest banks. We also have more than 5 asset management firms who strictly uh, uh, have activities related to non-interest capital market. We also have about nothing less than about 16 Shari'ah-compliant mutual fund in the market. So you can see that all these instruments, all these financial institutions will be looking up to investing in Sukuk. Why? Because this is the only Shari'ah-compliant sovereign financial instrument they have opportunity to invest in. As far as the CBN is concerned, the Sukuk, the sovereign Sukuk, can be classified to be near cash. So meaning it is assumed you have cash.
It's extremely liquid.
Yes, extremely liquid. So having it is same as you holding cash. So you can easily use it to manage your liquidity, and you can also use it to act as collateral, and it will be easily acceptable by anybody in the market. So it's an investment that probably everybody is looking up to, and it is what investing in, because number one, it is tax free. Number two, it is risk free because of the sovereign guarantee being provided through the Central Bank of Nigeria to the DMO for any investors in this particular school. So you can see there is an incentive to you, and nevertheless, it also gives you that joy when you pass through roads constructed through Sukuk funding. As an investor, you look like my money is here. So it's like
they're really working.
so there is that joy that comes through passing through a road. I said, my money is here. We that we work in the financial institution that have structured Sukuk, when you pass through those projects, you also feel happy, like I contributed towards this project. So that those are non-financial return that you can get through passing those through. So you have the financial benefit. You also have the non-financial benefit, which is the infrastructural development that everybody can actually see.
Yeah. So you mentioned something about sovereign Sukuk. Can you please differentiate between sovereign Sukuk, sub-sovereign, and corporate Sukuk?
So just like in the conventional market, in the capital market, we classified bond or Sukuk 2 to be either sovereign. Sovereign meaning when Sukuk is being issued by the federal government of Nigeria or an agency like the Debt Management Office, which issues Sukuk on behalf of the federal government, then we classify it as sovereign, especially when it has the CBN backing.
Right.
It will be classified as sub-sovereign when it is being issued by state governments. Most especially, some comes with what we call ISP, that is the Irrevocable Standing Payment Order, which means from on a monthly basis, there will be some deduction from their FAC allocation, so that it will be going to the sinking fund being managed by the SPV, the form of the guarantee that the investor's rental will be paid as at when due. Okay. Then when it is being issued by a corporate entity now, so when a corporate entity, meaning if the Sukuk is going through the Securities and Exchange Commission approval process, it will be classified as a public Sukuk. But if it will likely be issued privately, then we'll classify it as a private Sukuk. So the sovereign for federal government, the sub-sovereign being issued by state government, while the corporate are those issued by corporate entities who want to come to the market to also access funding for a large specification.
Okay. So you mentioned that the Sukuk 7 is risk-free. Now, why is that attractive to beginner investors and also seasoned investors?
So it is attractive to anyone because, number one, like I mentioned, it is risk-free, it is tax-free, so meaning there is no anything like withholding tax on the rent has been paid to you. On the other hand is the fact that there is secondary market for the Sukuk, meaning easily where you want to liquidate your investment, you can easily get somebody who is willing to buy. And now there is a particular advantage in this particular issuance. As at the last time, the highest rentals that we paid by the federal government has been around 16 point something, which was the Sukuk 1. However, in this particular series, they are paying as high as 19.75%.
Wow.
Per annum.
So that's the return.
Wow, yes.
Per annum.
It is the highest ever paid in any of the federal government of Nigeria Sukuk issuance. So it means that for anybody who wants to invest in this particular one, this is a very big opportunity for you to utilize. Then the other one is the fact that for the last 4 issuance or 5, it has been 10 years issuance. That means the maturity period. However, this particular one, it is 7 years. So meaning, apart from the fact that the rate is good, the tenure is also good for any investors because the maturity is also okay. So I think the rate is good for any investors, be it retail investors or institutional investors, going by the actual rental that will be going back to you as an investor in this particular FGN Sukuk 7.
Well, I just want to draw you back to something you mentioned just now. You said 19.75% is the return. So if, for example, I invested 100 million naira, every year unfailingly with zero risk, I'm earning 1.9 million naira in return. Or since it's paid semi-annually, I'm earning 800,000 naira every 6 months.
So when let's assume you are investing 100 million naira.
Yes.
So I think at the end of the year you likely be getting 19,750,000 naira, which is annually. So by the time you divide it into 2, it will be around 9 point something million naira every 6 months.
Yes.
On a lighter note, for a bachelor probably who also want to marry now, you can use Sukuk to even pay your dowry because it's an investment, it's a near cash, like I mentioned.
That's true.
So what stops you saying, I want to marry in the next 2 years, and you put your money in FGN Sukuk? When the time for marriage comes and you don't have the capacity to pay, why can't you use the Sukuk investment to give it to your wife, even your unborn children as gift? So I think whether you are a low income earner, you are a middle income earner, or you are HNI, with as little as 10,000, yes, some people look at it that it's too small. The investment you do today is still better than those money you spent that may not be accounted for. That money probably you want to use in buying shawarma this weekend, buying suya or chicken. You can actually divert it into purchasing Sukuk. And apart from the return, at least that inclusivity that me, Ismail, have also contributed to the infrastructural growth of the Federal Republic of Nigeria is there. So I think you'll be happy when passing through those roads.
Yeah.
And especially for women. Women don't like investment. You have to be truthful at this moment. So please come and invest. Don't buy mascara this weekend. Don't buy abaya. The seller is coming. You can use the opportunity to invest in FGN Sukuk because the abaya doesn't have secondary market value.
Yet. Well, I just have one more question for you. What if some people are not able to mobilize their funds before the deadline, which is 20th May for this Sukuk 7? What else can they invest in if they're interested in non-interest investments, or do they have to wait for another Sukuk in next coming years?
So I think the good thing here is that a lot of mutual fund fund managers who operate mutual fund will probably purchase this particular sukuk as part of the underlying asset or asset class in their mutual fund. So meaning, if you are not purchasing the sukuk directly, those mutual funds will give you the opportunity to invest in the sukuk indirectly. So for instance, you have the 117 halal fund. When you invest in it, technically some portion of your money will also be invested in this particular sukuk and other federal government sukuk that have been issued in the past. So the opportunity is there if you have the capacity, invest now. If you don't have the capacity after the closure, you have two things to do. Is either you'll be able to purchase when it is listed in the secondary market, or you purchase through some mutual fund. Why I say when it is listed, it is not immediately after sukuk issuance that the sukuk will be listed for secondary market trading. There will be a milestone in which the money must have been used for the asset in which it will be created, it was meant for. So it is those, when the asset is on ground, then the sukuk will not be listed in the secondary market. Sometimes it could be after 6 months or up to 1 year after the sukuk issuance. This is to show that the sukuk is actually Sharia compliant. You cannot trade money in an Islamic finance.
Yeah.
It must be an asset that can be traded. So at the point when the sukuk proceeds have not been used in creating an asset, it cannot be traded at that point. It is when the capital has been transformed into an asset and the asset has a specific percentage of the total amount that has been raised. Then at that point, it can be traded for listed for secondary market trading. Otherwise, it will not, so that we avoid selling money for money, because it is not Sharia compliant to trade money for money. That is why some Islamic finance contract, you only sell it at par, because it is a debt or sales contract. At that point, it cannot be traded or listed for secondary market trading and be subjected to the forces of demand and supply.
Yeah. So I have one last question for you. And it's a very important question. Do you pay? So you said that it is tax free, right? You don't pay tax on your sukuk returns, but do you pay zakah on it?
Yes. So if your total wealth is by the time you join them together, it reaches the nisab at the end of the lunar year, especially when you use Ramadan to Ramadan, then it will be zakatable. So meaning you don't look at it in isolation, except if probably what you invested is already more than the nisab itself, then you need to talk to your Islamic financial advisor that will now be able to advise you accordingly whether you need to pay zakat or not. However, for such kind of investment, yes, it is part of what can be classified to be zakatable because it is still your money. So, but however, we have to be looking at all your wealth, especially for people who have their money in pieces that may think that their wealth is not yet at the nisab level. So I think all those are things that need to be well considered.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mr. Ismail. It was very lovely having you here. Please like, subscribe, and tell your friends, tell everyone you know that FGN Sukuk 7 is out.